Hello, everyone. Bruce Morris from the TABB group here. Welcome to TabbFORUM's Market Structure Wave. Market insight, innovation, and implementation are three critical factors all successful enterprises must master to remain successful in business today. These components also happen to be the key tenets to Plato Partnership and their upcoming 7th annual MI3 conference to be held in London on June 21st. Today, we are very fortunate to have Plato's CEO, Mike Bellaro, and Carol Comerton-Forde, Professor of Finance at the University of Melbourne, join us to discuss Plato's role in the market and their annual MI3 conference. Hi, Mike. Hi, Carol. Welcome to TabbFORUM.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having us.
It's our pleasure. So, Mike, to get us rolling, can you share with our viewers a bit of background on Plato Partnership and the work that your organization accomplishes?
Yes, of course, Bruce. And thank you again for the opportunity. Look, Plato Partnership is a consortium of 40 of the largest buy-side, sell-side firms across Europe. Plato, is a reminder to the watchers, to the viewers rather, is a not-for-profit company committed to bringing next-generation innovation and efficiency to today's very complex marketplace, if you will. At the heart of Plato Partnership, there really are two important initiatives. One is our partnership with Turquoise. So we've created Turquoise Plato, which was directly responsible for bringing block trading mainstream in Europe. This added significant value to the end investor from a strategic liquidity perspective by reducing slippage and eliminating front running of large institutional order flow. And in my view, essentially at the time, we've created the gold standard of partnership with Turquoise. Right, for the first time ever, you had the buy side, sell side, and a venue working towards the greater good for the broader marketplace. The second major priority of Plato is, and really at the heart of Plato, is sort of our academic division, which we call the Market Innovator MI3. This essentially is a division which actually commissions independent academic research and analytics, which helps stimulate the debate about the future of market structure design. We're very proud of the work happening within our academic division. And as an example, we've commissioned 12 pieces of academic work in 2022 and looking to commission another 10 to 15 for 2023. So a lot of exciting things, a lot of research will be hitting the pipeline over the next couple of months.
Thanks for that. Mike, I'm going to follow up with, if you could describe the origins of the MI3 initiative for our viewers.
Yeah, of course, Bruce. If you look back in time, right, across policy decisions, particularly in Europe, we really did not have the input from the world of academia during important phases of our evolution, such as MiFID and MiFID II. Many of the most renowned academics at the time, in the space, were really looking at the US. It just was more popular at the time. And the other problem that academics had in Europe was really access to data, right? So even if they had a good idea, right, in a lot of cases, essentially it was impossible for academics to actually find the data necessary to perform a robust academic piece of work. So we decided that this was something that the market desperately needed. So we created the academic division. As part of our commitment to bringing academic research to European markets, Plato does fund the cost of the data. We have a partnership with BMLL Technologies, which actually the academics will use to run the data. Plato will sponsor the payment for that, and they can run all sorts of interesting models based upon the data. So for the first time ever in Europe, right, the European academics have now access to the most robust set of data sets at the fingertips, which we hope then actually allows the academics to actually want to cover Europe even more going forward. Just on the MI3 division, I also wanted to mention that we've actually had two significant milestones take place over the last 2 years. So now when an academic is actually producing a piece of research, right? Like I said earlier, one of the things we wanted to do was to help the policymakers make more informed decisions, if you will, on sort of the future structure of market design going forward. And now we have the opportunity to actually bring the academics into the meetings with policymakers and regulators, right? Which is a fascinating milestone for Plato, right? So now the academics, have the ability to actually, present their findings and thoughts on a, particular topic, which is, I think, ultra important for the broader marketplace. I think the second milestone is now we actually have the regulators coming to Plato, regulators, policymakers coming to Plato, asking us to commission particular pieces of academic research, right? So if you think about that, right, so now the policymakers, regulators are understanding the importance of the input from the world of academia, right? And that just sort of makes sort of a more perfect model sort of how regulatory topics should be considered and viewed going forward potentially.
So Carol, can you share with our viewers the purpose of the MI3 conference?
Sure. The MI3 conference is really about bringing together practitioners with academics. So to have an opportunity to share ideas and exchange thinking about what's going on in the markets and how the academic research can perhaps shape that and be influenced by that. So it's a two-way interaction. The academics get ideas from the industry, but also the academics can inform some of the industry practice. So we run the conference exactly like we would an academic conference, which some practitioners find a little bit unusual, in that what happens at an academic conference is the academic gets up and presents their work, and then a second unrelated academic called a discussant gets up and critiques that work publicly. So they comment on, what's good about the paper and how it can be improved and so on. And so this is really an important part of the academic peer review process, improving the rigor and the relevance of the work. But at the Plato conference, rather than focusing on the detail of the research method, the discussants focus on what are the policy implications for this work? How can practitioners take this and interpret it and use it for their own practice? So it's a really great opportunity to have that interaction. Perhaps even more important than those academic presentation sessions are the informal interactions that happen over the coffee breaks and the lunch breaks, where people can talk to one another, share ideas, and really get a shared understanding of what's going on in the market. And so I'm really excited this year we're back in person for the first time in a little while. So those in-person interactions will be really important. And then the final element of the conference is an industry panel, where we get leading experts from industry who come and talk about really topical issues. And that helps the academics get a feel for what are the current issues that are front of mind for practitioners to help inform future research.
So why do you feel, I think it may be obvious, but talk to the collaboration between academia and the market participants and why it's so important for both of these perspectives to come together. And maybe, Carol, you talk to the academic side of this question, and Mike, if you could, after Carol's finished, dive in on the market participation.
Sure. So I think the real value in the collaboration is that some of these opportunities are relatively sparse, right? It's relatively difficult for individuals to find the right touch points and the right people to engage with. And so I think MI3 and the conference and the work that Plato is doing creates those valuable opportunities for people to meet and interact and find who's the relevant person in my area of expertise. And I think sometimes academics and practitioners kind of speak different languages, and it's not until you get together in a room and have a sort of a detailed conversation or a detailed presentation about a piece of research that you actually start talking the same language, and that can be really valuable and can help to translate some of the academic ideas into policy discussions and policy decisions. And I think that's incredibly valuable. And as Mike pointed out before, a huge amount of academic finance research is really slanted towards the US. And so the MI3 initiative really creates an opportunity for people interested in European markets to get access to data, access to the relevant practitioners to help engage in research in the European context. And I think that's really important given the stage of the European market development and the very many policy issues that are on the table for discussion that can help push forward good policy outcomes for European markets.
And Mike, you want to jump in on why it's important for the market participants?
Yeah, I think when you look at the European landscape, particularly from a regulatory perspective, I think there are a lot of industry bodies out there that do significant amount of work, heavy lifting, extremely valuable to the marketplace, and they're providing their input to the regulators, policymakers, the broader marketplace, and they should be commended for the work that they do. Then you have forward-thinking buy-side, sell-side firms that obviously very committed to market structure design, and obviously speaking before regulators and policymakers as well, and trying to get their views to be understood and appreciated, right, so that we can at least sort of steer the debate in a right direction. I think the beauty of MI3 is the fact that now you're actually bringing in independent academic, so academic research are doing independent research, right? So none of the research is actually dictated by Plato members of the marketplace, right? So we come up with a topic that we think is relevant for the issues at hand today, and then Carol will help decide what is the appropriate academic team to work on that project, and then that team will go out and actually do their own analytics, their own research, and come up with their own conclusions. And I think if you're sitting in a regulatory seat, right, or a policymaker seat, right, and now you have an independent coming, right, with a view on something that maybe supports what an industry body said, I think that just gives it much more gravitas and actually relevance, right, just to understand, okay, maybe that viewpoint is actually correct. So I think from that perspective, it's extremely valuable to shape sort of the future direction of travel, if you will, from my point of view.
And I might just jump in and add that independence piece is also critically important from the academic perspective, right? We want to do work that is independent, and that I think sometimes people are reticent to engage with industry because they feel that there may not be that desire for independence. But obviously the Plato initiative is really great on that front.
So Carol, sticking with you on the topics for the conference, what are some of these papers going to be addressing, or what are some of these presentations going to be addressing from their papers?
Great. So we've got a really exciting program. We've got 4 pretty diverse papers. We've got 2 that are looking at equity markets, 1 fixed income, and 1 DeFi. So the first paper in the equity market is looking at the question of who benefits from exchange innovation. So the authors are basically examining the introduction of proprietary products and services in the US markets over a relatively long time period to see who benefits from those innovations. And what they find is that innovation leads to improved liquidity outcomes for people trading in small sizes, but that it actually increases the cost of trading for institutional investors. Obviously, tune into the conference to find out more about that paper. The second paper, also an equity paper, is developing a new measure or adapting an old measure to let us better understand where price discovery happens. So does price discovery come from trades, or does it come from quotes? Does it come from exchanges? Does it come from other trading venues? So they're really trying to understand that question of price discovery, and that method could be applied in any context, but they're looking at the equity markets. And then the fixed income paper looks at data on indicative quotes from bond dealers to show an empirical association between quote competition and liquidity. And you won't be surprised to know that when there's more quote competition, you get better liquidity. And when you have more competitive dealers, they attract more order flow. This paper is looking at this question in the context of the US market using data from BondClick, but I think it really has important implications for the European market in terms of the consolidated tape. So lots of debate around how should the consolidated tape look? Is it going to improve the quality of markets? I think this paper shows very clearly the benefits that a consolidated tape can provide. And then finally, the DeFi paper looks at price formation on Binance, which is a large centralized crypto exchange, and compares that against Uniswap, which is a large decentralized crypto exchange. And they provide evidence that smart contracts and blockchain have the potential to offer new ways of trading in the marketplace. So that just gives you a flavour of the papers. Obviously, tune into the conference, sign up and come and join us in London to find out more detail and to really understand what's going on with that type of work.
And the papers presentations are not the only information that's going to be shared. Mike, I know that there's going to be a pretty interesting panel discussion that's scheduled at the conference. Do you want to share with the viewers some of the highlights of what that panel is going to be discussing?
Of course, Bruce. Yeah, look, it's going to be a fascinating panel. We got some of the brightest minds in the business actually will be participating on the panel. We have the UK regulator coming as well, so it's going to be extremely important debate. I think the first topic of interest, obviously a hot topic in the US these days, is the movement to T+1. So we're going to be talking about T+1 challenges and implications for European markets. This is something we actually had just released a paper, I think 4 or 5 weeks ago, entitled T+1 Looking at the Bigger Picture, which is a pretty fascinating piece of work that actually explains some of the difficulties that Europe will have as a whole, right, with a T+1 environment going forward, particularly if US is T+1, Europe stays as it is, or US goes T+1, Europe goes T+1, but UK stays the same. So that's going to be an interesting debate. The other topic, obviously, that resonates well with the US view is obviously access to retail flow. So we'll be talking about retail trading, trying to determine how do we actually improve data access for retail investors. We'll be debating the pros and cons of banning payment for order flow in Europe. And probably one of the biggest topics that we keep hearing out there is potentially the institutional access to retail flow, right? So obviously retail is becoming a bigger part of the ecosystem, and institutional investors have no access to that liquidity. So how do we actually create potential environments where both parties can potentially interact? The other point just make, we're going to be talking about sort of the concerns, post-Brexit. There looks to be regulatory divergence in Europe. So you have, the European markets going one way, the UK regulator going the other way. What does that mean for liquidity, for trading, et cetera? So it's going to be a fascinating conversation. And then the other big topic, and we're trying to work on something now on this, is really sort of there are more and more concerns about the high cost of market data costs on market participants, and trying to debate sort of what should the industry do about this, what should we be presenting to the regulators, policymakers. Just the cost of data these days has gone right through the roof, and meanwhile, right, everyone's volumes are down, right, revenues are down, et cetera, but cost of data continues to skyrocket. So I think that's going to be a fascinating debate as well.
Well, Mike, Carol, this year's MI3 sounds like a great event, and I just wanted to thank both of you for sharing your time and insights with TabbFORUM today. And to all our viewers, if you can make it to London on June 21st, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. And there's going to be a big red button at the end of this video that you can click. It'll take you right to the registration page, and you can sign up for the event. Mike and Carol, thanks again.